Hi everyone, this is EDIT 5100, Chapter 3, Assistive Technology to Support Reading. All right, preschool to third grade normally is learning to read, right? You're learning your alphabets, and you're learning how to put words together and sound it out. Fourth grade and onward is about reading to learn. So you read to understand what's going on. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on as well, which is problems faced by children with disabilities who have trouble reading, how technology can help struggling readers whose learning is compromised because their reading skills are below grade level, which basically means that they're reading, let's say if they're a sixth grader, they're reading at a fifth grader, fourth grader, or something even lower than that. And three, how computer technology can be used as an instructional tool to teach children to read. Reading problems in students with disabilities, the extent of the problem. So let's talk about the statistics. The National Assessment of Educational Progress said less than 1/3 of eighth graders with disabilities scored at or above grade level on the reading assessment. So less than 33% of students with disabilities were reading at their grade level or more. Most of them were reading less than. The National Longitudinal Transition Study, too, said that 21% of high school students with disabilities read at 5 or more grade levels below their grade. So 5 or more, okay? That's a lot. So if they're a sixth grader, they're actually reading at first grade or kindergarten level. Think about that. How much learning can you get if you don't know how to read, right? And I think that it's such a scary thing to realize that there are people who just don't know how to read. And, we take that for granted, and it's a serious issue. So I hope that you're aware of that and that you're open to teaching if that is your area of expertise. Students with attention disorders have problems with reading comprehension. They might lose their place while reading, have trouble keeping what they read in short-term memory, have to read the same paragraph repeatedly to get any meaning because it's frustrating for them, right? So they keep on reading it over and over and over again. Reading becomes mentally fatiguing or basically tiresome. So let's talk about reading to learn, technology as a compensation tool. So IDEA 2004 reauthorization basically said that they wanted to provide accessible instructional materials in a timely manner. When timely manner is defined as at the same time that a student's non-disabled peers receive their instructional materials. So what that is saying is that if you do have to have accommodations for a client or a student, that you need to have it done before you give it to anyone else. You cannot say, hey, everyone else, all the students without disabilities, here's the information. You with a disability, I will give it to you soon. Okay. Instead, you want to give it all at the same time. And that's why sometimes even I struggle if there's an issue with accessibility and then the assignment is posted a little bit later. Okay. And I apologize for that. Accessibility. The content can be presented in different ways so that the reader can choose the option that is most effective for them. So for some students, they might want an electronic copy so they can blow up the words or change the contrast and stuff like that. Because when you have a physical book, you can't change the contrast, right? You can't make it bigger. You can use a magnifying glass, definitely, but you can't just make the book bigger, right? When we talk about accessibility, is technology has enabled us to be much more accessible to people with disabilities, and that's fantastic. Electronic text can be displayed on a screen, manipulated to be visually appealing, and can be read aloud by a device. And that's very true, right? And we'll be teaching you how to do all of this as we go along in this chapter. Allows for a struggling reader to comprehend text that is written at a higher reading level. Because let's say that they don't know how to read really well, but as they program the computer to read the words for them, they're learning how to read, right? This is a really wonderful way that a lot of people, let's say who are English as second language learners are, when they put on the captioning on a television show or a music video that they like, they can read along while they hear the singer or the actors talk, and then they can pick up certain words, okay? For a person with a visual impairment or is blind, Braille format might be the way that they can then convert it. So even though you have like a Word document, it can actually be converted to Braille, which is basically another language for a person who might have a visual impairment. Electronic text is considered dynamic and flexible. Dynamic basically means that it can move in different ways, okay? So it can be converted into different things. So we're talking about font, line spacing, word spacing, and then also the margin widths. It can be read out loud. E-text files can retain their formatting, such as boldface, headings, and subheadings, to allow for screen reading software to understand the order and importance of certain things in a document, and can be searched easily because of that. There's Bookshare is one thing, one website that really does help a lot, and I hyperlinked it, so please feel free to go on to and explore it. But it has over 360,000 accessible books that can be downloaded to a computer or mobile device for students who qualify as having a print disability. So then that way, they can see highlighted words on the screen, they can hear the text being spoken, and they read with digital braille or enlarged font and read directly from an internet browser. So they even have New York Times bestseller books, okay? So you just have to fill out a form, the client does, the student does, and if they qualify for it, then they can get all these books for free in a digital format. It's fantastic, and it should be a resource that you take seriously, okay? And I believe that if you don't have a documented disability, you can also, I think, buy in on it as well. And I want you to know that you should try this out if you have a student who does have this, because you're giving them an entire library that will be accessible to them, okay? So for Bookshare, here are some of the eligibility requirements for the student. 1, student with visual impairments that keep them from reading standard print. So they could be someone who is deemed as blind, legally blind, or have other functional vision limitations. Or 2, students with physical disabilities that prevent them from reading print or using a book print, or without the ability to hold or manipulate information in printed form, or not able to focus or move their eyes. So right there are physical disabilities. If you cannot turn the page for one reason or another, or whatever it is when it comes to a regular typical paper book, then they would be qualified as well. And 3, students with reading disabilities based on an organic dysfunction that keeps them from being able to effectively read standard print. So again, that kind of all these things basically cover a lot of things when it comes to disability, right? So it's actually not very hard. And I will tell you that actually one of your classmates from a previous semester who did have a disability, he actually went on there and he qualified for it, and then he started using it immediately. Again, this is free service for people with disabilities. Please take advantage of this. Bring it up when it comes to an IEP meeting, or talk to your teacher if you're working with a teacher about the fact that this is actually available. There's actually other resources that we're going to talk about throughout this entire chapter as well. All right, we're talking now about text to speech. So the words actually being spoken out loud. Converts electronic text into spoken audio. Speaks the word on the screen. It could also highlight the corresponding text, kind of like karaoke. Allows for a synchronized auditory and visual presentation of the text. And then, of course, color highlighting helps readers keep their eyes on the line of text, while the speech output provides outgoing or ongoing auditory feedback. So again, it allows the student to actually go along with the text and then hear the words being spoken at the same time so that they can catch up with their reading abilities. Here are some software programs that you can use, or apps. I'm not going to read through all of these, but you can just look at these and then go forward from there via your file. All right, now that we've talked a little bit about text-to-speech, I also wanted to give you directions on how to turn it on when it comes to Microsoft Office Word on a PC or on a Mac. Those are the two things that you see on the top that are hyperlinked, okay? Depending on your version of Microsoft Office Word, which I know we all don't have the same version, potentially, or the computers that you have access to or your students have might be different, right? So these are little guarantees on how to access it. Otherwise, in the most recent version of Microsoft Office, it might be in the ruler section on the top, the menu bar, okay? And also, just to let you know, there is one version of Microsoft Word that has no text-to-speech at all. Like for some reason they didn't buy the rights to it, and so there, I don't remember what year it was. It might be 2014, 2016. I cannot remember where you cannot do it. Okay. All right, the next hyperlink is Project Gutenberg, which is very similar to Bookshare, except for it is for things that are copyright free. Okay, so we're talking about Shakespeare, we're talking about the Bronte sisters, we're talking about Pride and Prejudice, Moby Dick, all those things that are copyright free. So there's lots and lots and lots of books. However, they don't have anything that is more recent, things that are, let's say, on the New York Times bestseller list, which is accessible on Bookshare, but not here because people still need to make money for the things that they created, right? But these are older books. So it's a really great resource. Usually I would have us all go through and look for some books on there, like Moby Dick and stuff like that, and know that there's still another major resource for some of the readings that you might have with your students. Table 3.2 talks about software and apps that can scan, print, convert it to e-text, and read out loud. So let's talk a little bit about that as well. Optical character recognition, which is basically a software where when you take a picture of a document, it can pick up the words inside the document and then convert it, let's say, to a word text. Okay, so think about when you deposit a check at an ATM machine, or even on your phone. You take a picture of it, right? And then it'll scan it and it'll say, does this say $500, right? And then you confirm, right? So that's optical character recognition. It also is used for resumes. You know how people apply for jobs and they email out a resume? And let's say that the job gets like 1,000 resumes, right? There's not a person there sitting there reading through the 100,000 or 1,000 resumes. There's a machine that picks up all the words that they want. And they'll say, you know, if it reaches the 75% amount of words that we want, then put them into the next step, right? So maybe a human will actually look at those. So optical character recognition will be one thing that we will be doing in this class, and I'll be showing you how to do it step by step. There's also an app called Doc Scanner and OCR Free for iPhone. There's also an OCR demo of me doing it with some assistive technology. It's my demo of OpenBook and Pearl Camera, which we will talk about, but feel free to look at the thing. I think it's only about 5 minutes or so of me doing this, and you can actually see how it picks up words. Even though there might be a photograph of an image of a person in it, it won't pick up that person, but I'll pick up all the text inside, and also some of the mistakes that might happen. And so we'll go through and talk about those considerations as well in the future. There's also alternative formats. Here are 5 that they talk about in the book. DAISY, which is the Digital Accessible Information System. Another accessible format is PDF files. We can also have sound files, also known as MP3 audio files. There is also large print, and also BRF, which is just Braille format. Okay. Again, these are other options that you can provide. I will tell you this, if you create something in Word and make it accessible, don't turn it into a PDF. Just keep it as the Word itself, okay? Whatever format you created originally, you should keep it in that. Don't change it. It's just gonna go a little bit more crazy if, or confusing if you try to convert it, because it might alter certain things in it. I know for sure when you have a Google Docs and you change it to a Word doc, things may change in the formatting or the color and stuff like that. All right, let's talk a little bit about low-tech adaptations that support reading. Highlighting is a really helpful for students who cannot skim text when studying. So you might even have certain colors for certain things, like a yellow highlighter for topic sentences, blue highlighter for unfamiliar vocabulary, and green highlighter for more important names. And you can do that on a Word document, or you can actually do it on real paper as well. There's also sticky notes that jot down reminders and questions that you can put onto the book or something like that, and then they can remember this is the topic or the idea that they might be doing for a book report or whatever. Okay, and of course having low-tech adaptations such as a book holder. So it's kind of like, you know, like a cookbook holder, and I've hyperlinked it to Amazon so you can go shopping there so you can see what a cookbook holder looks like, and that could also be considered a low-tech adaptation to help reading, because some students might have physical disabilities that prevent them from holding a book down. All right, let's talk about scan read systems. Combine the use of a computer or mobile device, a scanner or a camera, an optical character recognition software, and a speech output to read aloud any printed text while providing a visually enhanced display, right? So for the most popular ones would be Kurzweil 3000, which is specifically designed for people with learning disabilities, the Win Read and Write Gold, and Claro Read Plus. So these are all hyperlinked, so you can actually read more about each of those things. But they're a scan and read system, right? So it's going to scan a book or art document or whatever, convert it, and then let you, as a student with a disability, have access to it. There's also scan read systems for students who are blind or visually impaired. So now this is things that will help a person who cannot see, right? Do not have reading comprehension problems, and many are fluent Braille readers. Barriers in gaining access to printed materials in a timely manner. Need quick access to print, such as a morning newspaper, the mail, professional reports, or legal documents. So this would be Kurzweil 1000, which is for people who are blind. So Kurzweil 3000 is for people with learning disabilities, like comprehension and stuff like that. But Kurzweil 1000 is just for people who have no cognitive challenges. They just can't see, right? There's also OpenBook with Pearl Camera, which you've seen in a previous link of me demoing it. But here they're hyperlinked to the actual companies that provide or create those devices. There's also Win, which was also already hyperlinked before, and then KNFB Reader as well. There's also National Instructional Material Accessibility Standards. IDEA 2004 says that there's a guide for publishers in producing digital versions of textbooks that can be easily converted to alternative formats. So what that is saying is textbooks and stuff, there is a rule or a law that is also asking from IDEA where you need to provide a digital format or alternative format for students with disabilities. But then, of course, it goes into copyright issues. It is illegal for school personnel to make an electronic version of a textbook with a scan read program and provide it to several students without first receiving permission from the copyright holder. Alternative media centers require documentation of a print disability to comply with copyright laws. So let's talk about that. Okay, you as a teacher cannot reproduce a textbook to give to your students. That's just illegal, right? And you have to think about it from a author's point of view. They spent years researching, right, or whatever, writing books for your students, right? So they should be fairly compensated for that stuff. Imagine a person wrote a book and it took them 2 years to write, and collaborations that maybe they paid for people to write part of the book because, you know, they contributed chapters or whatever. And let's say they spent let's say $1,000 on this, right? And then they sold one book for 40 bucks. And then that person just copied it and then distributed it to 100 people. Therefore, they've lost so much, right? And that is something that's happening in the digital age. Whether it is their fault or not we're not going to go into that, right? But we also want to respect those things as well. But we will also talk about certain copyright rules in the next couple of slides as well. But just to give you a different perspective, right? The authors who've spent time putting their work into this creation, they should be fairly compensated. All right, now let's talk a little bit about fair use. For purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research, you should be able to then have use or access to this. There's a 4-factor test. This one is the most important, which is amount of work that is to be reproduced. No more than 10% of the published collective work may be employed under fair use guidelines. An article or a chapter in an alternative format is okay. So let's say that you have a book with 10 chapters. 10% of that would be one chapter. So you do have the right, if you're using the fair use rule, where you can reproduce one chapter and it would still be okay. Okay? But after that, it would be then considered copyright infringement. and you could be sued for that. There's also the Chafee Amendment, allows authorized entities to reproduce or distribute copies of previously published non-dramatic literary works in specialized formats exclusively for use by blind or other persons with disabilities. So here's another issue. If your student has a disability, usually they will have to buy the book still, or a resource will purchase the book for them. And from that, they can then convert it into a digital copy for that student to use. As long as you paid for the rights of it, because they have a legal and documented disability, then you can convert it into it. But it should only be for them, right? Again, it could be argued in other ways, but this is what the rules are when it comes to a legal term for reproducing things. In terms of accessible instructional materials, or AIM, navigation. Determining the need for accessible instructional materials means selecting the format that will best meet a student's needs, acquiring the alternative formats, and then selecting playback devices and determining needed support such as training. So those are all the things that you need to consider when it comes to giving someone accessible instructional materials, right? There's commercial e-readers such as the Amazon Kindle, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. That's a photo of it right there. The Samsung Galaxy, which might be in your pocket right now, and also the Apple's iPad or its iPhone, whatever it is. You can also use all those things to also read as well. Now let's talk about commercially available audio books. Audiobooks are accessible at public libraries, brought in bookstores, if bookstores are still around. I don't know if there are anymore. I'm sure there are. Downloaded from iTunes or an Android equivalent. And probably one of the most popular places, though, is the audible.com, which is a website. It has synchronized images for picture books in children's section. So with Audible, just let you know, the first book, I think if you sign up for it, is free. And then after that, every month you are charged $15 and you get 1 credit basically. So 1 credit basically allows you to buy 1 book each month. If you want more, it could be something like $20, $30, or it could be $10, it could be $1. It really depends on if they have a sale and also what book you're looking for. The thing that's really interesting and really grateful or awesome about Audible is that it's actually human, usually reading the books, and usually people who are voice actors. So the books are read really well as well. And some books have multiple versions. So it might be a male voice, a female voice, a voice that is British, a voice that is American, or whatever it is, right? And so you're able to go through and then actually listen to it before you purchase it, like a little sample. You can decide. Usually in our class, I would go into the Audible website and then we would listen to different types. And you can see why Moby Dick read for a $15 book is maybe better than a $2 Moby Dick book read by a person, because the quality of the reading is not so great. And we're talking about engaging a student, right? So if it's really boring or poorly recorded, which some of them may be compared to others, it might not be very fun or engaging for a student. I mean, imagine having a book read by, let's say, Julia Roberts or someone famous, with a soothing voice. It might actually be much more engaging. Framework for evaluating interactive ebooks, like I said in the previous slide, should engage students and enhance their experiences of the stories, not distract them from the narrative flow, ease of use, and the quality of voice. I apologize right now for my voice, right? But it is what it is. And then the rest of this slide right here shows you different places where you can actually also get books as well, where they are considered vetted for the quality and stuff like that. But again, you have to go through them as well just to see whether or not it's going to be good for your situation. All right, reading tools for students with significant disabilities. So before, all we had were just sight words. So the student sees something and then they read it and that's it. But now we approach it with a balanced literary approach. Seated in communication, integrating reading, writing, speaking, listening, and critical thinking, and grounded in meaningful contexts that incorporate learners' interests and experiences. So what does that mean? That means that we are trying to now engage a student in multiple ways, okay, so that we see that they understand what's going on. Students with significant disabilities may need more than just audio. Maybe they need a visual support or videos. Teachers can create their own talking ebooks. Did you know that? And we're actually going to create something like that as well. All right, so if you did want to create your own, Tar Heel Reader is a really wonderful resource. It actually also has other people's books that they created on there already. So please click on this and visit the Tar Heel Reader and look at the accessible things that are there already. Okay, there are things like how to put on gloves or how to wash your hands. There's also Cast UDL Book Reader, which is another place that you can also create things as well. I am a huge fan of creating things like what you see now, if you're looking at this on YouTube, which is through Microsoft PowerPoint. I'm actually recording all of my lectures through PowerPoint itself. You can also do it on Google Slides, Apple Keynote, and then Prezi, which is not 100% accessible, but it might be very engaging for some students depending on what type of accessibility that they need, right? Here are some helpful guidelines. Number one is to shorten the text and provide it into segments. So maybe it should be shorter sentences or maybe one sentence per slide so that it is engaging and accessible for that student. Two, reduce the number of words in the text by creating summaries, right? No one wants to read a whole long page of stuff. You need to be able to learn how to summarize as an instructor effectively. Three, augment the text by adding pictures and repeated storylines. Again, some people are visual learners, so having the text with a picture can help them understand what's going on in this slide. 4, use a predictable structure. So let's say that the back button should be the lower left and the forward button should be on the lower right. Keep them there. Don't change them all over the place all over the time on every slide. Keep them stable so that the person knows how to use it. Learning Ally, which is very similar to Bookshare and also Project Gutenberg. But again, it's more similar to Bookshare in the sense that you do need to provide proof of a disability to be able to get access to it. Learning Ally, which is also hyperlinked here, books can be accessed only by or for students who have documented print disabilities. Depending on the school, you might be able to apply for it through the school and then get it that way as well. You can also volunteer to read a book or even volunteer to do quality control because these are volunteers who are helping read the books out loud to record them. So in that sense, it's like Audible books because it's a real person reading it, not a machine like, let's say, Microsoft Word. They also have adapted books. Students need reading materials that match their reading abilities and their interests. In that sense, that means that they can change the quality or the level when it comes to the vocabulary words and stuff like that as well, depending on the version of the book. Read along with the text and allows pausing to take notes about certain points in the book as well. Start to Finish and other resources. So again, this is another resource, Start to Finish Online. It has abridged books that are written at lower grade levels, but designed for the interests and curricula of higher grade levels. So a abridged book basically means kind of like a condensed version or a summarized version, because maybe the person cannot read at that level or can understand the writing. So it might be like kind of like a sometimes shortened version of it or a slightly altered version of it. It is considerate text, which basically means that it's thinking about the text level for the person who's reading it or the audience. Limits the amount of new vocabulary and carefully introduces new words. And new terms are printed in bold and defined in a glossary. Here are some on the next column that are different places that are similar to this in the sense of abridged books and other resources. Fluency. Fluency basically means like the speed of it. Once you know how to read, we're hoping that you know how to read at a good level or a good speed, right? If you have learned how to read, but let's say one page takes you 2 hours to read, that means that you're not necessarily very fluent yet because you're not able to recognize the letters or the words and then comprehend it and then go forward. So we need to practice learning how to be more fluent or become more faster readers and be able to understand the materials as well. So here are 3 different websites that help you with it. One is called Reading Naturally. The next one's called Raz Kids. And the next one is Start to Finish Library. And basically what they are they are educational sites that help a student learn how to increase their fluency. They do require payment. Some of them do have a free trial for you. And then also some of them just belong to schools. I know that some of your classmates in previous semesters have said that their schools already have some of this and that they love it and they use it actually with their students with disabilities. All right, comprehension, meaning basically understanding, right? So we're talking about being able to summarize things, summarize what has been read, basically, tell us what the overall big picture was. Questioning is pose a question about book content that is important to know and remember. Clarifying is to ask about something they do not understand in the text. Predicting means use what they know to make a prediction about what will happen next. Visualizing means visualize the setting or an important event in their heads. Feeling is asked to make a personal connection to the text or to put themselves in the character's place. And of course, reflecting, which means to reflect on the progress as a reader. So you as an instructor might ask your students to summarize what was just read, or question, or clarify, or predict, or visualize, or talk about the feeling, or about just reflecting on the information that they've gotten so far and see whether or not they actually understand what it is or comprehend what it is.